Okay, welcome everybody. You're used to seeing Cara, and I'm usually online, but today I'm the teacher, and Cara is here, and she is online doing the wrangling of questions and what have you. So welcome to session 3. Please scan the check-in code here and do check in so that we know that you attended today. All right, trying to keep this menu out of the way. Every time I do that, that's what happens. Okay. So today we are going to speak about customer discovery and markets and a little bit about competition. And so here we have the rest of our sessions. We're 1 week out of the way and we've got another 4 to go. And so things are getting real. You can open up your workbooks and find session 3. And there are a lot of questions in there. Actually, they're not. Can you send them the customer discovery questions?
They're posted in Canvas.
Okay, they're posted in Canvas. All right, this segment is part of the positioning. I like to think of it as still part of the discovery process so that you know whether you're going to be building something that people want, or if you don't take the advice that you're gathering and you're going to build something that you want. So this part is about market research. It's where we have formulated our idea and now we have to go out and validate it. So how do we give customers what they want? We do that by talking to them. We also need to understand who our competitors are and what industry that we're in. But first, you're just focused on your idea. So these are the steps of running your business. You ideate, then you design, then you produce, you market and sell, and you iterate. So customer discovery comes right after the ideate phase and before you design. This is the way to do it so that you don't waste time and money on building what you want instead of what customers want. It's a 2-part process. The first part, we're going to talk to customers about the problem that we've identified and a little bit about our solution for it. And then we're going to take that information and actually develop the solution and then go talk to customers again and find out if we've created a good solution. So we're going to talk to everybody that we know. Of course, we want to talk to potential customers, industry experts, our existing network, social media. You can run a poll, it doesn't cost money. And you need to talk to people who don't love you. So when you're talking to customers, it's best to try to find a location where there are going to be a cross-section of people who may or may not be aligned with the people that you think are your customers going into it, and talk to everybody that you meet. You will be taking notes when you talk to them. So this part of what we're talking about today is how to craft the questions so that you're not leading them to the answers that you want to hear. So this is more important for the next phase, being able to describe your solution in 2 to 3 sentences. But first, we want to ask open-ended, unbiased questions in discovery. It's very interesting that we have number 1 and number 1. Okay, so one is probably 0 and the other one is 1. So these are the questions, and they're worded in such a fashion as to not be leading. Have you experienced this situation? And then you have to describe the situation. And so you should try to describe the situation in such a way as when you finally have that light bulb moment and it's like, well, this is a problem and it should be fixed. I think I can fix it. And this is how it occurred to me. And so you're going to describe the situation that led you to that light bulb moment of saying, this is a problem that I might be able to fix. So you describe the situation, and then you ask them, is this a problem for you? And if it isn't, but they're still interested, then you can ask them about putting themselves in the place where they would experience this as a problem. and then ask them where they would be and what they were doing when they experienced the situation. And if they answered yes, that it was a problem, then you want to get details on how they're experiencing the situation and what, if anything, they are doing to try to resolve it. You can ask the frequency of experiencing the situation. And notice I'm calling it a situation less so than a problem, because problems want solutions. Situations are also can be problems, or they can be a good thing. So by describing it as a situation, it keeps it a little more neutral. And you can ask, how interested are you in an easier solution than whatever it was that they were doing on a scale of 1 to 10? And so maybe it's not a problem for them, and so no solution is going to be helpful to them. But if they're experiencing the situation and they want to resolve it, then finding out how they're doing it currently, any problems that are associated with that particular solution, and how interested they would be in a better solution. And do you know other people who experience the situation? And how long should you have to wait for the solution to work? So I know you must be familiar with drugs that take, a month before they start working. Okay, so you're hopeful for that month. You're hoping that your body is going to be the one that processes the drug better, and you get to experience some relief before the month is up. But you have to determine whether they're willing to wait a certain amount of time for your solution to work. Now, if you have a solution that works really quickly, then you're in great shape. But there are some solutions where it's going to take a little bit of time. So, and then how much time are you willing to invest in learning the solution? Some software products, which are supposed to be solutions, are so difficult to learn that the cure is worse than the disease. So people have more trouble trying to learn this new solution than just status quo, just staying the way they were. So this can be an important question to ask if you have a solution where they're going to have to gain some expertise in using your solution before it will be really effective for them. Are you willing to pay for a better solution? If you are, how much would you be willing to pay for a faster or better solution? And if they are currently spending some amount of money on the solution, then you can ask them specifically, would you pay more if it worked faster or if it were more effective? Or would you be willing to, would you switch? Like if it were exactly the same price, but I can guarantee that it's faster, would you switch? Because there is that point, and they can say whatever they want to that answer or to that question, but in reality, it has to be 10 times better in order for people to switch. People don't really like to switch. They're very comfortable in whatever it is that they're doing. Okay, then if this is a one-time solution, how often are you willing to pay for it? So I always use the example, I color my hair. Okay, I color my hair, I pay whatever it costs, and then 6 weeks or 8 weeks later, I have to do it again if I want to keep my hair free of gray hair. So though that's a situation where you're going to be a repeat customer, and how often would you pay for it? On the other hand, if you have to rototill your land every year, you don't own a tractor, so it's going to be like once a year, you're going to do the same thing over, you're going to rent it for a few days, maybe you're going to rent it in the spring, and then you're going to rent it in the fall. So it's a question of timing. How often would you be willing to pay for this solution? So these are the discovery questions. You should ask them of everybody that you meet. If you have a fair, or you have a powwow, or you have some situation where a lot of people are coming from not just your normal circle, but they're coming from other areas, this is an excellent time to do these customer discovery questions. And then you're going to take all the information back, and you're going to compare what those people have said to what you thought you were going to design. And you can see if you can work in the majority of answers that you have there. Are you able to modify what you thought you were going to design to accommodate more of those requests? The second part then is to create a little prototype and bring it with you and talk to people again. And so you can go back to a busy street or a movie theater or, something where you're going to find a lot of people. And so, we were here 3 or 4 weeks ago and we were asking about this situation, and we have an idea for a solution. And we took all of the input that we received from our customer discovery questions, and we've created this. And even if it's just a drawing of something, or if it's a little wooden mocked up model, or maybe you have a 3D printer that you have access to, so you can print a plastic one. So you can bring this thing and show that to them and ask them if, understanding the situation that I just described, do you think that this will solve that issue? Why or why not? And if you've experienced this situation, what else do you think that this solution should do? How would you change it? Some people want it to be smaller. Some people will want it to be a different color. Some people will want the shape or the design to be different because they want to fit it in a pocket or they want to put it in a backpack. They may have different ways of envisioning using it that would make them think you should change it in some way. And then you can ask, do you think the others that you know with this problem would like this solution? Why or why not? And what would you be willing to pay for this solution? If it saved you X amount of time, or if it saved you X amount of dollars doing this other thing, how often would you buy it? Would you consider testing an early version of this if we make it? And then you can gather their name and contact information so that you can send them a version that they can test. They have to agree, though, that if they're going to test it, that you can call them every day, every other day, whatever the set schedule is, so that you can ask them if they've used it, how they liked using it, did they run into any friction points? Is there something else now that you've used it a little bit that you would like for it to do? And so you are going to have this relationship now with this beta tester of your version. And then you can also ask, if they say no to that, if it's not the solution for you, do you think it solves the problem for anyone else? And if you do, who are they? Who do you envision them being? Who would need this product? And where would you expect to be able to find this product to purchase it? So you can gather a ton of information. This last question is one where they may be thinking of a different customer persona than what you've thought of. And so there may be a whole different channel of people who would want to use your solution. So you're then going to gather all this information and take it back, and you may tweak your design. You may create a prototype and then use these people to help test it. I would say, though, if you're going to do some testing, that you're going to want at least 10 at the minimum, and I would say more than 20 is better, to be having different types of people testing out your product and giving you feedback. So this is all customer discovery and then testing the solution. And it'll enable you to help define who your customer is and also how to sell your product, because your customers that are testing things will tell you the best features of your product, which you can then write a little something about. We can go back and create that 2 to 3 sentence description of what the product does. Okay, so now you have a product, but you still haven't started making it yet, I hope. And so now we need to do some research on the market. We need to understand what industry we're in and what the potential for this product or service is. And so you'll hear these words, TAM, SAM, SOM, a lot, especially if it comes to investing. If you watch Shark Tank on TV at all, they will often ask, what is your TAM? And what is your SAM? And so we're going to quickly go over what these items are. These slides are available to you. Okay, so TAM is the total addressable market. It's all the people in all the world that can buy your product or service. It's also kind of defines the industry that you're in. And because it is industry information, this is a number that can be researched. You can find out what the current spend in this industry is. Now, the service available market, SAM, is the subset of the whole industry that is in your geographical area that could buy your product or service. This is also a number that can be researched. So let's say TAM is the transportation industry and SAM is the transportation industry in the country in which you live. Or it could be, you could go even like one step further. You could say TAM is the whole industry. The next level is the country that you're in. And then SAM could be the state that you're in. But when we get to SOM, SOM is the serviceable obtainable market. And this should be a projection of your revenue for a time-bound period. So the TAM and SAM, we want to understand the world as it exists now. And with SOM, we're trying to make a prediction of where we can be in a short period of time. We're striving for the SAM number. That's our goal. But we know we're probably only going to get a percentage of that. So SOM is a realistic number. We can set our sights on that. And our investors, if we're able to go after investors, will understand that we have done the work to get to SOM because it's really tough. I mean, you have to do all of your sales projections. You have to understand in this time period, 5 years or 7 years, where we're going to have our market. So if we start in northern Nevada, and Reno is the big market, and we go into the rural area of Nevada, and our second market is Las Vegas. Or let's flip it. Let's say we start in Las Vegas, and then we know that our next market is going to be in the same state. So to get to SOM, to do that revenue projection, you kind of have to put yourself in business, and you have to figure out, okay, when I get to this much revenue, that's when I'm going to go to a second market. When I go to a second market, where's it going to be? What's it going to cost me there? What am I going to have to do to get my product to those people? Do I have to have a distribution point there? Do I have to have an employee there? And so SOM is really hard because you actually have to spend a tremendous amount of time understanding how you would get 5 years in the future or 7 years in the future with the growth that you want. So this slide shows a bunch of different investors and how important they think understanding the market size is. So for investors particularly, they know that you're starting off with a business, you're going to grow slowly at first, and then hopefully you get traction and you grow quickly. But there has to be enough room in the market for you to do that. You have to be able to expand rapidly and into a large market. And that's why these investors are all interested pretty early on when you're talking about a pitch deck in understanding the market size. So that's TAM. The SAM helps with downside risk. They know that even if you only penetrate one market well, it's still a big enough market for them to get a return on their investment. So that's TAM and SAM, and that's why they need to be researched. Okay, how do you find these numbers? Well, finding the numbers can be tough and it can be really expensive. So the last thing on my slide here is external research. And this is what a big, well-established company would do before they acquire another company or before they go into a new market making a new product, say a new beverage or something. And it's expensive to do Forrester and Gartner research. So the best way for us to do it is to start with a Google search. Google will give you a lot of information and it will cite websites that have done the research, Statista, for example, or IBISWorld. And so as you start putting in what it is that you're looking for, you'll find out which database has the information that you need. They will not show you the whole article, but we have help for you. So once you know, you'll note down that it's Statista, and you can even note down the name of the topic that they have done the research on. And then we're going to go to, at the very end, the last slide I have for you is the name of the research librarian, also the patent librarian at UNLV. And he is great at helping people to do this kind of research. He has access to many databases, including IBISWorld and Statista and several others. And so he can actually find the, I don't see the questions.
Says, how much typically are fees for external research services?
Oh, in the $20,000 to $50,000 range. So really more than what a startup can afford. And so these other sources are just as good. They may not be as specific, but you know what? They're faster and they're cheaper. If you commission a report from Gartner or Forrester, you're going to wait 3 months before you can get that information back. If you're thinking about doing an app, a phone app, App Annie and the business of apps, you may pay a smaller fee for that. It's not going to be anything like Gartner and Forrester. So you would be able to get access. I don't know at this time what UNLV has with regard to app research. So we'll see. Let's see. So bottom up. With bottom up, the only number that you really want to be bottom up is your song. All right, so I have a couple of quick examples for you, and there are companies that are well known. I am not condoning the use of these companies. I actually do not use Uber, but here's Uber. So way back in 2007, when they were first presenting to investors, they took transportation as their industry, as their TAM, and it was 5.7 trillion back in 2007. All right, for SAM, they went all the way down to taxi and limousine service. Now, transportation worldwide, that includes air freight, that includes shipping, it includes rail, and it's for the whole world. They took it way down to taxi and limousine services in the United States. So their SAM was 4.2 billion. So we went from 5.7 trillion down to 4.2 billion to be in our actual target market. And then for SOM, they created 3 different numbers. They said their best case would be that they would be the market leader and they would generate 1 billion in yearly revenue in some time in the future. Their realistic goal was to get 5% of the limo and taxi amounts for the top 5 cities. So they were started in San Francisco, where it was impossible to get a taxi anytime efficiently, especially like from 3 to 7 o'clock at night. So they started off as a 10-car service, and they had clients that could call them at any time. So they said their worst case would be that they would remain a 10-car, 100-client service in San Francisco. Sorry, my slide is blocked off there. So I always refresh this before I come and do a presentation on this. Uber's revenue in 2023 was 37.6 billion. So 37 times bigger than what they thought it could be. Their current valuation is 139, almost 140 billion. And of course, they've expanded into other areas. So they're also doing Uber Eats, Uber X, they're doing freight, they're doing mobility, they have scooters in some cities. And so they have expanded what they thought of as their SAM. So their SAM has really grown. Now this is, how many years later? Is it 14 years? 17 years? It's a lot of years later. All right, so Airbnb. Did you have another question? I'm hearing you. Okay. So this is the Airbnb example, and Airbnb was actually an air mattress on the floor. Okay, so there were a bunch of students who were living south of Market in San Francisco again, and they noticed that there were no hotel rooms to be had when they had a big convention in town. And so they thought that if they offered a room with an air mattress on it, that they could find a budget traveler who would pay for that. And so they looked into the travel industry. And so they started with 1.9 billion trips booked worldwide per year. And they knew that the person who would sleep on the floor on an air mattress was not the Four Seasons type. So they limited themselves to budget and online trips to get to 532 million trips. And then they estimated that they would be able to get 10.6 million based on the convention schedule in San Francisco and the lack of rooms. So these are numbers and they are not dollars. When we talk about TAM, SAM, SOM, we want it to be depicted in dollars so that we understand what the spend is. So to get to that, they picked their 10.6 million trips times their fee of 20 million. So an average stay was going to be 3 nights at $70 a night. Their fee would be $20. So they got to their sum of 200 million revenue. And this was when they got to it at 2011. So they also started in 2007, 2008. All right, now here is a different example, and it's one that's probably more relatable for us. There were two guys, sports fans in New York City, and they thought it would be a fun idea to rent out jerseys for sports fans. And so they figured that their market would be the season ticket holders. And so to understand how big the market was, they picked the 5 most popular team sports and they looked at viewership and they saw 150 million Americans watch the 5 team sports, the 5 top ones. And then how many can they reach in their market? They're in New York. So they figured there were 11 million sports fans in New York who watched the top 5 sports. So they wanted to do some market research. So they went to Yankee Stadium and they talked to people. They talked to all sorts of people with the premise going in that it was going to be season ticket holders that wanted to buy a jersey for the season. Since they were sports fans, they knew that players got traded all the time. And so they had allowed for that. If your player gets traded, you can pick your next favorite player on the same team, or you can get that player's new jersey wherever he went, right? So you can switch it out a couple times per season. So what surprised them was that when they were talking to people, that there were a bunch of people who wanted to buy it just for the 1 or 2 games that they could afford to go to each season. So they would rent it one off 2 times. It's like, oh, okay, so now the wheels are turning. What are we going to charge if we only rent it to them one time? Okay, we've got to have the jersey, we've got to send it out to them, we've got to give them a way to get it back to us, and we're going to be doing that a few times, and we're going to have to clean it in between, right? So let's think about our costs there. All right, so based on their research, they had 11.7% of the people that they talked to had a strong interest in doing this and actually renting these jerseys. And so based on the 11.7% of the 11 million New York rabid sports fans, that would work out to about 1.3 million people. And based on their requests for full season versus one-offs, they figured it would be almost half and half. So this is how I reworked what they did there into our stacked Venn diagram. This is the easiest way to understand how markets work. And you can see that the circles within circles, the smaller circle is a subset of the larger circle above it. So Tam, we have 150 million US people. Sam, we have 11 million New Yorkers. And Sam, we have 1.3 million New Yorkers that we think will buy. But this doesn't get us to dollars. So based on their research, they have 1.3 million customers. 60% are going to do it one time. 40% are going to buy for the season. So their fees for one time were $50. Still cheaper than buying a jersey and having it take up space in your closet versus the seasonal rental of $250. So if you were considering whether you should have it for the season or can have it one time, the season, if you're going to go to 5 games, that really pays for itself. So times what they were considering charging, one time was going to be the $50 and it would work out to 39 million. And the seasonal people at 250, 40% of the population. And so that would get you to 130 million for seasonal rentals, a total of 169 million. And so the point of this is that they were trying to be realistic about how they were doing it. And if you were seeking investment, being able to defend how you got to some and how you thought through this process is what the investor is looking for. They don't necessarily want the complete, detailed information, but just arbitrarily saying, if I get 10% of this market, that's what my sum will be. That there's no basis in truth there. There's no reason to think that. It makes the investor think that you were too lazy to sit down and do the hard work of figuring out what your sum is going to be. All right, so this is my example that I show of a company that StartUpNV has invested in. And this is a company that makes soaps, lotions, these scent things for a particular type of customer, and they know exactly who their customer is. So it has an outdoor theme. They have products like Lust in the Dust and Blazing Saddles and Whiskey something or other. So they're very sort of earthy, cowboy or adventurer type things. And so they know that their customer is 8% of Americans and that it's a $3 billion market. And so this is what they show. It's really clear. But as they're talking about this, they describe who their 8% of Americans are. So, oh, I didn't include that slide. All right, so it includes people who are in the military, people who go to summer festivals, and people who drive Harleys, who own Harleys. And so they have discovered that this is their people, that's their tribe. And so that makes up 8% of Americans. And then the market is based on these lotions and soaps and candles and home scent stuff, works out to a $3 billion market. So you can make a beautiful slide like that. All right. You are now getting closer to being able to define your customer. So you've already created, based on what your potential customers have told you, you've created your product, your prototype, you have asked them what they think, you've tried to determine who else people you talk to think might use this product. And so now you can start to develop not only your customer profile, but you can also create your, oh, here's competitors. Let me get over to where I want to be. You can create your value proposition, which is where you use your own words or the customer's words to describe the problem and what your solution is doing for them. And that is your quickest way to make a one-sentence description of what your company does. Okay, so competitors. You also need to know your competitors, see where you fit, and to decide whether you're going to charge more or less or about the same. So to find out who your competitors are, this is also something that the research librarian can help you with. Okay, so who are your direct competitors and who are your indirect competitors? An indirect competitor is the status quo. It's people not having enough incentive to change. They're just going to keep functioning the way that they are, and they're not willing to part with their hard-earned cash to buy your solution. That is always competition for you. Whether you think it is or not, it is. All right, direct competitors are making something that's very similar to you. An indirect competitor is a solution that gets part of the job done, but it's not created specifically to solve the problem that you've identified. Okay, so your competitive advantage, you want, as you decide whether you're going to build your product or not, you're going to want to make sure that you offer something that the others do not. Otherwise, you're just throwing your hat in a ring with all these other hats, and there's no reason for people to pick your hat versus somebody else's hat. So when you're joining a very competitive market, meaning that there are a lot of people who are offering something similar, you have to find out what your differential feature is. It has to be something that creates a moat, that makes it so that people want to switch to you, but they don't want to switch to the next one because the thing that you're providing is so great, it's faster, it, you know, we talked about, like, does it take a long time to learn the solution? In some ways, that can create a moat. I don't think it's the best way to create a moat, but with large, complex pieces of software, it does. Companies don't want to switch from one piece of software to the other because companies think about, okay, I've got 200 employees and I'm going to have to train these 200 employees 2 times to get them to use this software. So you want to make it really easy to switch. You want it to be a very easy to use product. Okay. So how do we depict competition? One of the ways that we can do that, it was with this rack up. It's a grid, it's a matrix. We just call it a rack up. And you will list your competitors across the top and your different features along the side. And you will show how your product is better than their product. One of the ways to do it is with these check marks. Notice that the check marks are much bigger than the little X's, which means that that product doesn't do that. The price is down at the bottom, and that's a relative thing. If you go so far as to actually put your price in versus your competitors, then I would warn you that you need to check the prices every time before you present that pitch deck, because it's the easiest thing in the world for somebody who's listening to check. While you're talking away, they're on their phone and they're looking for competitors. And that's why competition research is important, because investors will be interested in how competitive the marketplace is, and they will get out their phones and they will search on a general description of what your product does to see how many competitors there are. And if you don't have the major ones listed, they get suspicious. Here's a nice one that is from a couple of kids from UNR. Every year UNR does a business competition called the Sontag competition. And so Stern, they've changed their name now to Truck House. But Stern, back then, they actually won the competition. And what they were doing is taking Tacomas and they were outfitting them with marine quality products and surfaces. So everything was waterproof. They had solar panels, it could run by itself. Because they put it on a Tacoma truck, it was smaller and more agile and able to go more places than these larger offerings like the Earth Roamer and some of these others. So it had a lower profile, could go farther off-road. So they're still in business, and they build customized versions. I think the price has probably doubled by now, especially in the last year. But this was a very nice competition slide, and so they allowed me to use it. All right, so for your industry, you should continue to do research even as your business grows so that you can figure out who is coming up behind you, who has done the same sort of market research and is going to come in as a new competitor. All right, what's your product or service, your mission and value proposition? So the value proposition says, we do this to help our customers do this. And then when you say what the customers are doing, you want to use their own words and how you're helping them. All right, here is the Holy Grail. This is the person that I have referred to. Patrick Griffiths is great. When we're doing classes down in Las Vegas, he will actually come in and bring his computer and do research on the spot. Now, that sounds like it's a fast thing, but it usually takes 20 to 30 minutes per person, because trying to hone in on exactly the sort of research that you need does take a bit of time. But you are welcome to write him, and the more specific you can be in the questions that you ask, the better the data is that he can return to you. So my slide is thank you, but I'm going to leave this one here so you can copy down the information, take a picture of it. So we have questions. So Tam Sam Sam, I talked a lot about investors, but if you're going to dedicate yourself to a business that is going to take up the next 8 to 20 years of your life, and you have a thought that you're going to want to grow quickly, you should be doing this research for yourself. You should want to understand how big the market is. Patrick also has access to another database called BizMiner, which is one where you can hone in into like a 3 or 4 block area of a community to figure out how many competitors you have if you're considering starting, let's say, a shoe repair business or a diner or some other sort of Main Street business. That software can hone into a very close area and tell you how many competitors that you have. No questions? How many people do we have? 6. Oh, okay. All right. Well, Thurman's always good for a question or two, but he said he wasn't going to be able to make it today. So don't be shy. I'll switch you to my slide now. So if you do have any questions, you can write to me and I will get back to you. And if you need help figuring out how to hone down your market, I will help with that. Usually when I give this talk, those are the types of questions I get. Well, this is what I'm thinking of doing. So how would I phrase my questions to Patrick so he can do the research? If you have an app idea, being as specific as possible is a good idea for that. Okay. Well, if there are no more questions, I will stop sharing for a moment so you can see my face. And I will thank you. Thank you for joining me today. If you do have any questions, Maggie@startupnv.org, and it's patrick.griffiths, Griffis, at unlv.edu, and he can help you get started on your market research. Okay. You did Patrick.Griffiths, right?
Yep.
Okay, great. Thanks. We'll see you guys on Thursday.